Stupid and unacceptable. Not my words, the words of Yuki Tsunoda after his spectacular crash in Q1 for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix here at Imola today. Very, very spectacular. Car up in the air off the barrier down at the second chicane. John, very, very harsh on himself. Are you being as harsh on Yuki Tsunoda as he is being to himself?
I think you have to be. I think, if this had been gunning for pole position in the fight at the front in Q3, putting it all on the line in the final run and you crash, I think you can probably get away with that and think this is someone pushing the edge. But this is a Q1 lap. This is your first time out in the car. You've changed your setup. It's a day where the tyres have been really tricky. The C6 hasn't performed very well. It's been on edge. Everything's there to be a challenge. And then to attack, attack the first chicane, then you attack the second chicane just as aggressively, pitched up over the curbs, bounced back down and lost control. The aim of Q1 is to finish in the top 15. You don't need to be 10th or 5th or 1st. Just get in the top 15. So I think to make this mistake at the beginning of a Q1 session, I think he's got it right.
And obviously, Yuki Tsunoda, he was thrown in for the Japanese Grand Prix, the third race of the season. He had to learn on the job. He had that first triple header, had time to go away, came back from Miami, then he's come back for this triple header. So it's not exactly that he's fully experienced in the car, but he's starting to get to that point where I want to see consistent performance from him. Would you be worried if you're Red Bull? Would you be worried if you're Yuki Tsunoda?
I think not at the stage that, if he performs badly in the race tomorrow, then he's going to get sacked and they'll put someone else in. But I think what Red Bull will need to see now is some proper progress. I think the acclimatisation phase was fine. He jumped in. We saw, signs of some potential there. There's been some speed. The technical feedback's been good. The team's been trying to embed him and get him to understand the car. I think he's understood some of the limitations now, some of the aspects of the car, how it turns in that he's not particularly happy with, and then needs to work on setup, and needs to be helped with upgrades, and they need to improve that car. So there are elements that are going to take time, but I think what the team cannot afford is mistakes like this in a Q1 session. These are the things that derail a season. They're not expecting him to win races. They're not expecting him to be ahead of Max Verstappen. They're probably not expecting him to be within 2 or 3 tenths every single time, but you cannot afford to do what he did today. And I think if he doesn't start turning the corner and start making progress, then I think the questions come in, not necessarily for this season, the summer break, but I think as they look towards next season, especially with Isaac Hadjar doing really, really well, some other potential, other drivers could make themselves available and show some interest. So I think he needs to start making progress, but it's not that he needs to do it tomorrow.
It's a really frustrating thing. It's the stutteringness of the progress. He seems to be chipping away nicely and then it doesn't come together, keeps happening. Friday practice, he was pretty quick. In fact, he was dealing with some of the oversteer in certain areas. The car had better than Verstappen. He was within a tenth. Friday doesn't count for much. Yeah. And then today, obviously trying to push himself on. And we've seen this with people like Alex Albon, Sergio Perez before. You see signs of promise. You think, yeah, there's a good thread there, but it's just improve, drop down again, and never get to that level. So that's what I think Red Bull will be looking for. And of course, really, it's all about for Yuki Tsunoda in career terms. He wants to make that drive his for 2026. You can never rule out Red Bull doing something in the interim. Absolutely not. But that's what it's all about. And if this goes on for another 4 or 5 races, then they get into the serious business of saying, right, who are we going to replace him with? Yet another driver change. That's the really worrying situation. Just never getting out of this endless loop of driver nonsense.
I think what Yuki potentially needs to do is take away from today what Kimi Antonelli took away from Monza last year. Disastrous first day in the car for Kimi, pushed too much, put it in the barriers, absolutely destroy. Anyone who's watched that Netflix show on Kimi, understands how that affected it, how it impacted him. When we spoke to him this season, he talks about, how it changed him, how it made him realise he needed to take a different approach. And what Yuki needs to do is take that out today, realise that what he did today is unacceptable. He cannot keep doing this. You need to build up. You need to take things, not necessarily slowly, but you need to not put everything on the line at moments when you don't need to put anything on the line. You put it on the line when you're fighting for pole position in Q3 in Monaco. Then, it's almost acceptable if you put it in the barriers, you've got to go for it. But you do not put it on the line and throw everything at it in Q1 session in Imola on a day when you've changed the setup and the tyres are especially tricky.
I think the big positive is he is hard on himself, and you need to be. He's not lying to himself. He was offered all sorts of chances when he was spoken to by the media to make excuses, and he said, well, no, I'm in my 5th year. this is not what I should be doing. And that's a positive because it means he can put the effort into trying to understand what to do. It's whether he can. And he doesn't lack the confidence in the car. It's just understanding a pretty capricious Red Bull that it takes an extraordinary driver like Max Verstappen to get the most out of.
Yeah, the RB21 is a very tricky car. They've been working on some upgrades. Yuki had his first run with the upgraded floor here this weekend. There'll be a few other side pod tweaks, a bit of work on the brakes as well. So they are making changes and improving. And I think this has been also a tricky weekend with the C6 tyre being so difficult. The questions over the C5, the conditions yesterday, everyone was absolutely nailed on with the C6 yesterday being perfect for qualifying. You come to today, track's completely different. Drivers are suffering from understeer. We heard Yuki in FP3 talking about just no grip. He was struggling with the car, couldn't get any feel from it. And I think if you're lacking confidence in the car on a day when the soft tyres, moving around, the team boss told us tonight, these 5G forces, that the car's suffering as it's going through, these 5G lateral forces as it's going through corners. If you're not confident in the car, it's moving around, you lack everything. And I think this is the error that Yuki made in terms of just pushing like this on the day when everything was almost stacked against him.
I think the positive thing is I'm still confident he's going to get there. Goes to Monaco next, he's got the race first, but Monaco next, maybe not the best place to go if you're on thin ice, but I don't think that'll dent his confidence. That's the really, really important thing. But of course, Yuki Tsunoda wasn't the only driver who crashed fairly spectacularly today, less eye-catchingly, admittedly, than the incident that Tsunoda had was Franco Colapinto, his first qualifying session for Alpine. Stating the obvious, isn't it? Nobody wants to crash a Formula One car, but he particularly didn't need that to happen, given that reputation he earned last year for throwing things at walls.
Yeah, there's been a lot of focus on Franco this weekend. Flavio Briatore has told him, three things was be fast, bring points, and don't crash. He fell foul of one of those today, pushing too hard. But I think like Yuki, it has been a difficult day. You're into a very tight qualifying session with a C6 tyre that's not very comfortable to be on. He's not tested the car before this weekend. It's a very narrow track. You're on the edge in tricky conditions. So I don't think there'll be any huge alarm bells ringing at Alpine about this, but it's not the start he needs. I think he needs to kind of knuckle down, especially because it was crashes ultimately that clouded the progress that Jack Dillon had made, because we could see the speed and the potential was there, just nailing the weekend and not crashing.
I remember asking him about the crashes in Abu Dhabi last year at the end of the season, and he pointed to that Las Vegas one and he said, that was an error of risk assessment, risk management. And that was probably what we saw today, wasn't it? He was desperately trying to get the pace to get the car through to Q2. Actually, he did make Q2 technically, he just had a bag of bits, so he couldn't compete in it. But he just carried that little bit too much speed, just went onto the grass and off you go. So I think that's key for him, just learning when to risk, when to take the reward, when to just say okay. And I think this was the weekend where he's playing himself in. He's got a 5-race guaranteed appointment, could go beyond that. And this weekend he needed to bed his way in, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. But I don't think what happened today will be any of concern to Flavio thinking, oh my God, I've made a huge mistake here. I think this is part and parcel of Formula One. He doesn't have the experience of Yuki Tsunoda. Sure, it was in Q1, but you're pushing on that very, very tight midfield pack in a car you've not driven before, on a tyre you've not driven aggressively before, on a day when, yesterday wasn't too bad pace-wise for the Alpine. Obviously, Franco got involved in that kind of racing other cars in practice because he was instructed to just to get up to speed. So I think there's a lot thrown at him in one weekend. I think it would be kind of brushed under the carpet, this one. But like Yuki, I think he needs to start delivering some hard results and showing the promise and potential to secure that seat beyond these 5 races.
And like Yuki, he absolutely has the ability to. So no panic stations, I think, for either Franco Colapinto or Yuki Tsunoda. They both have a race tomorrow, going to be pretty difficult for them, but it's all about building that experience, work towards Monaco next week.